Welcome back, and thank you for tuning into Midnight Affairs Tales. We appreciate every single one of you. We'd love to know what part of the world you are watching from right now. Let us know in the comments. Now let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The night was silent. Too silent. Gage Holloway pulled his truck into the driveway of the house he hadn't seen in 9 months. The engine rumbled low, its familiar purr almost comforting after endless desert nights filled with gunfire and sandstorms. He killed the ignition, gripping the steering wheel for a moment, his knuckles white. He had played this moment over and over in his mind. Walking through that front door, wrapping Vanessa in his arms, feeling her warmth again. But something felt wrong. His instincts, the same ones that had kept him alive in enemy territory, were tingling. The porch light was off. Odd. Vanessa always kept it on for him. The house was dark except for a faint glow coming from the upstairs bedroom window. He grabbed his duffel bag, stepping out of the truck, the cool night air hitting him as he walked toward the front door. The gravel under his boots crunched softly. He reached for the handle, unlocked. His pulse spiked. Vanessa never left the door unlocked. Slowly, he pushed it open. The living room was exactly how he remembered it, except for one thing. A leather jacket lay on the floor. Not his. A deep frown creased his forehead. His stomach twisted, that feeling of something being off tightening around his chest. And then he heard it. A low, breathless laugh. A man's voice. Her voice. Gage's grip on his duffel bag tightened. His breathing slowed, controlled, the way it always did before a fight. His heart hammered, but his mind was calm, focused. He dropped the bag silently by the door and took the stairs 2 at a time, the floorboards barely creaking under his weight. The bedroom door was cracked open, just enough for him to see inside. The sheets were tangled. His sheets. Vanessa's bare back arched as she moved, a soft gasp escaping her lips. And beneath her, gripping her waist, was another man. Gage's vision exploded red. Every muscle in his body locked. Years of discipline the only thing keeping him from breaking through that door and tearing that bastard apart. His hands curled into fists. His breath came out slow and sharp. What the hell was he going to do next? Wait, I need to tell you something important. Have you ever realized that you keep watching my videos but haven't subscribed yet? This video has reached this point, which means you're enjoying it. So why not subscribe? I have a big goal, 3,000 subscribers, and you can help me reach it. Think about it. If you don't subscribe now, you might miss my next big video. This is the moment. Hit that subscribe button now. Do it now. And don't forget to hit the bell icon so you never miss out. I know you'll do it. And when we hit 3,000 subscribers, I have a special surprise for you. Now, let's continue story. Gage didn't move. He didn't breathe. He should have expected this. He had been gone for almost a year. Long distance destroys marriages. But he had trusted her. He had loved her. Vanessa moaned, her fingers gripping the other man's shoulders. His wife. In his bed. With someone else. His body reacted before his mind did. With a calculated push, the door swung open. The hinges squeaked. The moment froze in time. Vanessa gasped. Her body went rigid, her hands shooting up to cover herself. The man beneath her. Logan Kessler. A cop from town. A man he had once shaken hands with. Snapped his head toward the door, eyes wide, caught like a deer in headlights. For one long second, no one moved. Then Logan scrambled, shoving Vanessa off him, reaching for his pants. Panic flashed across his face. Gage. Vanessa started, but her voice broke. Gage didn't hear her. He was locked on Logan. The Marine in him. The trained soldier. The killer. Took control. In 3 long strides, he was across the room. Logan barely had time to react before Gage's fist connected with his throat. The cop choked on air, stumbling backward. Gage grabbed him by the hair, yanking him up just in time to drive his elbow into his temple. Logan's head snapped sideways, his body crumbling to the floor. 3 seconds. That's all it had taken. Vanessa screamed. Stop. Gage, stop. Her voice cut through the haze in his mind. He looked down at Logan, who was gasping, clutching his head, eyes dazed. Gage's hands were shaking. Not from fear. Not from regret. From restraint. He could kill him. Right here. Right now. But that would be too easy. Vanessa was crying, the sheets clutched against her chest. Please, let me explain. Gage turned to her, his voice calm, too calm. Explain what? That this is just a misunderstanding. Tears streaked her face. I didn't mean for it to happen. Gage barked out a laugh. Didn't mean for it to happen? He took a step toward her. Vanessa flinched. Good. She should be scared. Because this wasn't over. Not even close. The air in the room was suffocating. The only sounds were Vanessa's broken sobs and Logan wheezing on the floor. Gage should have been furious. He should have felt something: betrayal, heartbreak, rage. But all he felt was cold. Dead. He turned back to Logan, watching the man try to crawl toward his clothes. His hands twitched with the urge to hurt him again. You have 10 seconds to get the hell out of my house, Gage said, his voice like steel. Logan looked up, his lip bleeding. Man, 9. Logan scrambled to his feet, yanking on his pants. 8. Vanessa sobbed harder. Gage, please. 7. Logan grabbed his shirt, stumbling toward the door. 6. He tripped in his hurry. 5. His shoes, he didn't even bother grabbing them. 4. Logan disappeared down the hall, his footsteps pounding down the stairs. 3. The front door slammed. Silence. Gage exhaled slowly. Then he turned to Vanessa. She was curled up on the bed, crying into the sheets. Pathetic. You don't get to cry, he said. Her head snapped up, her eyes swollen. Gage, he held up a hand, stopping her. He wasn't interested in her excuses. He bent down, grabbed his duffel bag, and walked out of the bedroom without another word. Vanessa's voice cracked as she screamed after him. Where are you going? Gage didn't turn back. He had a war to plan. The night air was crisp as Gage stepped outside, his duffel bag slung over his shoulder. He didn't slam the door, didn't stomp his feet, didn't let his emotions crack through the surface. Because if they did, he wasn't sure what he'd do. Behind him, inside that house, his house, Vanessa was still screaming his name. He heard the rustle of sheets, the hurried patter of her bare feet against the floor as she chased after him. Gage, please. Just talk to me. He kept walking. His truck was parked right where he left it, the metal handle cold against his fingers as he yanked open the door. He tossed his bag inside. Gage, she grabbed his arm. Wrong move. His body went rigid, his muscles locking like a loaded weapon. He turned to face her. Vanessa, the woman he once built a life with. The woman he swore vows to. The woman who had ripped them apart without hesitation. Her face was blotchy, her eyes swollen, but he saw no shame, only panic. The kind of panic people felt when they weren't sorry for what they did, only sorry they got caught. Talk to you, he repeated, voice deadly low. Yes, she breathed. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Gage exhaled sharply, running a hand over his jaw. He gave a bitter laugh, stepping closer until she had to look up at him. How was it supposed to happen, Vanessa? She swallowed, her eyes darting toward the house like she was trying to find the right words to save herself. He smirked. That's what this was. Damage control. You were going to keep screwing him, he continued, while I was gone, while I fought for this country. And then what? Let him crawl out the back door every time I came home. She shook her head. No, it wasn't. I shook that man's hand, Vanessa. His voice was sharp now. You introduced me to him. You smiled in my face while you were sleeping with him. Tears fell down her cheeks. Gage, I made a mistake. He took a step back, his chest rising with slow, controlled breaths. No, Vanessa. You made a choice. Then he got in his truck, started the engine, and drove away. Gage didn't go far. The rage pumping through his veins wouldn't let him. He pulled into an abandoned parking lot near a closed diner, his hands clenched tight around the steering wheel. The silence was deafening. His whole body itched for action. His fists wanted to break something. His muscles wanted to move, to destroy, to retaliate. But he didn't. Not yet. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He had evidence. The image of Logan tangled in his sheets was burned into his mind. But memories weren't enough. He needed proof. He scrolled to his call log and hit the only name that mattered. It rang twice. Then, brother. Gage exhaled, his grip on the wheel loosening just slightly. Garrett. His brother's voice sharpened. What's wrong? Gage let out a slow breath, his jaw ticking. Vanessa. A pause. Then a sigh. Damn. Yeah. You walk away? Gage's fingers tightened around his phone. For now. Silence stretched between them. Gage and Garrett had been raised by a military father. They knew what war looked like. And this was war. What do you need? Garrett finally asked. Gage's lips pressed into a hard line. A way to burn them both to the ground. Gage sat in the dim glow of a cheap motel room, his laptop open, a plan forming. The first step? Exposure. Vanessa had spent months, maybe longer, living a lie. And Logan? He was a cop. A man who had built a career on the illusion of being a good, honest officer. Time to shatter that illusion. Gage wasn't just a Marine. He had done intelligence work overseas. He knew how to dig. How to find things people wanted buried. He started simple. Social media. Vanessa's account was littered with pictures of them together, smiling, playing the role of the perfect couple. Logan's page was a mirror image of a devoted family man. Bullshit. It took him less than 10 minutes to find Logan's wife, Riley Kessler. Her page was full of wedding photos, anniversary posts, pictures of their kids. She had no idea her husband had just destroyed their family. Not yet. Gage uploaded the first file, a photo of Logan tangled in his bed, Vanessa's face barely visible in the blur of movement. Caption: Your husband forgot to lock the door tonight. Thought you should know. Then he hit send. He leaned back, watching the flames catch. This was just the beginning. Gage didn't sleep. He sat in that dim motel room, the glow of his laptop screen burning into his eyes, watching as his message to Riley Kessler was read. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. She was struggling to form words. Then finally, her response. Riley, who the hell are you? Gage exhaled, flexing his fingers over the keyboard before he typed back. Gage, the husband of the woman your husband has been screwing. No sugarcoating. No sympathy. She deserved the truth as brutally as he had received it. The message was read instantly. Then silence. For a full minute, nothing. Then, a photo popped up. A family picture. Logan smiling, Riley standing beside him, their 2 kids in front. A life built on lies. Then another message. Riley, tell me everything. Gage's jaw tightened. He stared at the screen, thinking. He had 2 options. He could walk away now, let her deal with it on her own. Or, he could make sure Logan felt the same level of destruction he had felt. He made his choice. Gage, send me your number. The phone vibrated. A second later, her number appeared on the screen. Gage grabbed his phone and dialed. She answered on the first ring. Her voice was shaky, edged with barely controlled rage. Who are you? She demanded. Like I said, Gage said evenly. The other betrayed spouse. A sharp breath on the other end. Then, you're sure? You're sure it's Logan? I walked in on them. Silence. Then, a shuddering inhale. Tell me everything, she whispered. Gage leaned back, eyes dark. It was time for Logan's life to fall apart. Gage had expected Riley to cry, to break down, to beg for proof. She didn't. Instead, she asked for details. When? Where? How long? Every question more calculated than the last. She wasn't devastated. She was planning. Gage told her everything. The affair. The betrayal. The disgusting, gut-wrenching truth. Then, she did something he didn't expect. She laughed. It was hollow, humorless, filled with something dark. He thinks I don't know, she murmured. He thinks he's smart. But I knew something was off. Gage frowned. What do you mean? I'm not stupid, she said bitterly. He's been acting different for months. Guarding his phone. Leaving late. The sex. She cut herself off, inhaling sharply. I just never had proof. Until now. Gage didn't respond. Because, deep down, he knew what she meant. He had been too trusting, too blind. He could hear her pacing through the phone. Then, finally, he's working night shift tonight. He won't be home until morning. Gage narrowed his eyes. And And I need time, she said, to get my affairs in order before I throw this in his face. She was smart. She wasn't just going to explode. She was going to take everything from him first. I'll send you the photos, Gage said. Another sharp breath. Thank you. He hung up and forwarded the files. Then he sat back, waiting. Vanessa and Logan thought they were in control. They were about to find out how wrong they were. Gage wasn't back at the motel for more than an hour before his phone rang again. Vanessa. He let it ring. Then again. And again. By the fifth call, he picked up. What? Where are you? Her voice was frantic. Shaky. Gage, please, I need to talk to you. Not interested. I'm sorry, she cried. Her voice cracked. I need to see you. Please. Gage exhaled through his nose, his patience thinning. Why? So you can lie to me some more. No, a deep inhale. I know I screwed up, but you can't just walk away like this. We need to talk. Talk. She had months to talk. She had plenty of time to come clean. To fix things. To not throw everything away for a cheap thrill. I don't need anything from you, Vanessa. His voice was cold. Unforgiving. Not anymore. Gage, please. If I lose you, I have nothing. He closed his eyes. She finally understood. Good. But she didn't deserve mercy. You should have thought about that before you invited another man into our bed, he said quietly. Then he hung up. Vanessa's world was starting to crumble, and he was just getting started. Gage didn't sleep. He sat on the motel bed, the cheap mattress sinking under his weight, staring at his phone as the messages poured in. Vanessa, please, let's just talk. Vanessa, I know I messed up, but don't do this. Vanessa, I still love you. Gage let out a humorless chuckle. Love. That word meant nothing coming from her. Another message popped up, but not from Vanessa. Riley, it's done. He's gonna lose everything. Gage smirked. Good. Logan had made his bed. Now he could rot in it. But this wasn't over. Not yet. Because Vanessa still had too much left to lose. By morning, the first cracks in her world had begun to spread. It started small. Her mother stopped responding to her calls. Then, her friends, the ones who used to comment on all her Instagram posts, calling her couple goals, started deleting pictures of them together. Then, her boss at the real estate agency called her into the office. Someone had forwarded him the pictures. The proof. The scandal. Cheating wives don't sell dream homes. By lunchtime, she was unemployed. Gage watched it all unfold, sitting in his truck across the street as she stormed out of the office, her phone pressed to her ear, her hands shaking, calling him, begging. He didn't pick up. She was finally feeling the consequences. And he wasn't done yet. The bar was dimly lit, the scent of whiskey and regret thick in the air. Gage hadn't planned on drinking tonight. He wasn't celebrating, not yet. But something about the way Vanessa's world was crumbling beneath her made the burn of bourbon feel a little smoother. Buy you a drink? Gage turned, his brows lifting as he took in the woman who had slid onto the bar stool next to him. Riley Kessler. Logan's soon-to-be ex-wife. She smirked at his silence. Relax, Marine. I'm not here to start a war. He took a slow sip. You already started one. Damn right I did. She motioned to the bartender. Whiskey. Neat. Gage studied her. She wasn't shattered like Vanessa. Wasn't begging for forgiveness like Logan. She was calm, focused, dangerous, and she was holding something back. You found something else, didn't you? He asked. She smiled over the rim of her glass. You're smarter than you look. Spit it out. She set her drink down, her expression shifting. Logan wasn't just cheating with your wife. Gage's grip on his glass tightened. She pulled out her phone and slid it across the bar. A photo. Logan. With another woman. In a hotel. The timestamp? 6 months ago. A different woman. A different affair. Vanessa had thought she was Logan's only secret. She was wrong. Before we go any further, I have a question for you. Gage leaned back, stretching his fingers over his glass, his lips curving in something that wasn't quite a smile. Where are you watching this from? His voice was steady, slow, like he already knew the answer. What city? What street? What time is it on your phone? He let the silence stretch, giving them time to think. Because here's the thing, every city has its secrets. Somewhere out there, someone just like him was watching their life fall apart because of a lie, because of a betrayal. Someone was sitting in their car, staring at their phone, feeling their world collapse beneath them. Maybe it's you. Maybe you've been where I am right now. Or maybe you're next. A beat of silence. Then he smirked. Let me tell you how this ends. Logan Kessler had a good life, once. A respected officer. A husband. A father. A man who shook hands with politicians and smiled for the local news whenever the department needed a poster boy. Now, he was one breaking news report away from being a disgrace. Gage watched from a distance as Logan walked into the police station, head down, shoulders tight. A man with too much to lose and nowhere to run. Riley had wasted no time. The evidence, already in the hands of internal affairs. The department wasn't protecting him anymore. He wasn't one of them. He was a liability. By lunchtime, the first domino fell. A statement from the chief of police. We take allegations of misconduct seriously. Officer Logan Kessler has been placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation. A pause. A subtle glance at the cameras. Then, we cannot comment further at this time. Translation? Logan was already guilty in their eyes. By the time he left the station, reporters were waiting. Cameras. Microphones. Officer Kessler, do you have a statement? Are the allegations true? Will you resign? Gage leaned against his truck, arms crossed, watching as Logan pushed past them, jaw clenched, fury in his eyes. He saw him, locked eyes with him. Gage smirked. The war was only beginning. Vanessa was drowning. Not literally. No, this was worse. She had no job, no friends, no support. And Gage? He had disappeared. She sat on the edge of their now empty bed, her body wrapped in his old hoodie, fingers curled around her phone, scrolling through old messages. Text from Gage. From before. When he still loved her. When he still believed in her. She could fix this. She had to. Before she could think, she was outside, keys in hand, driving toward the only place that mattered. She didn't knock. She banged. When Gage opened the door, he barely reacted. Like he had expected this. Like she was predictable. Vanessa, he said. No emotion. No warmth. Her throat tightened. That was the first time he had said her name since that night. She stepped forward, clutching his arm. Please. We can fix this. His jaw twitched. There is no we anymore. She shook her head. Gage, I messed up. But what? His voice was sharp. You didn't mean to? You didn't want to? He let out a slow exhale, stepping back, pulling away from her. You made a choice, Vanessa. And now you have to live with it. She broke. Tears spilled over as she reached for him again. But this time, he didn't let her touch him. You were my world, he said quietly. And you threw me away for a cop who can't even keep his job. Vanessa's breath hitched. She had nothing left. And the worst part? Gage didn't care anymore. The coffee shop was quiet. Gage sat near the window, arms resting on the table, eyes locked on the woman sitting across from him. Riley Kessler. She stirred her drink lazily, looking almost bored. You really did a number on them, she said, taking a sip. Gage smirked. And you didn't? She chuckled. Fair enough. A beat of silence. Then, I want him destroyed. Her voice was sharp now. Cold. Focused. Not just fired. Not just divorced. I want him to feel everything I felt. I want him to lose everything he ever cared about. Gage studied her. Riley wasn't weak. She wasn't a woman who got cheated on and cried about it. She was a woman who fought back. And for the first time since this started, Gage realized something. He wasn't alone in this war. Vanessa never thought her life would look like this. She sat in a cheap apartment, not their home, not the life she built with Gage, but a hollow space filled with silence. Bills piled on the table. Her phone had more missed calls from debt collectors than friends. She used to be somebody. The wife of a Marine. The woman who threw lavish dinner parties, posted picture-perfect vacations, wore designer clothes. No, she was nobody. And Gage? He was thriving without her. She scrolled through his Instagram, something she swore she wouldn't do. A photo of him in the gym. A video of him with his brother. A picture of him smiling. Smiling. Like she never existed. Like she was a bad dream he had already forgotten. Her chest tightened. No. She wouldn't let this be the end. She wasn't going to be the woman everyone pitied. She wasn't going to lose. Logan had never been a patient man. And right now, his patience was gone. He sat in a dark bar, whiskey burning down his throat, his jaw locked so tight his teeth ached. His badge? Gone. His career? Hanging by a thread. His marriage? Over. Because of one man. Gage Holloway. Logan slammed his glass on the table. Heads turned, but no one said a word. They knew who he was. Or at least, who he used to be. He grabbed his phone, scrolling through his contacts until he found the number. He hesitated. Just for a second. Then he hit call. Vanessa picked up on the first ring. Logan, she breathed. Her voice was shaky. Desperate. Pathetic. You want revenge? He asked. A pause. Then yes. Logan leaned back, a slow smirk curling at the edges of his lips. Then let's ruin him. Gage's instincts were screaming. Something wasn't right. He could feel it. He sat in his truck, staring at his phone, at the message he just received. From Vanessa. Vanessa, please, just meet me. One last time. I need closure. Closure. He let out a humorless laugh. She wanted closure now? After all this. But something about it felt off. He rubbed his jaw, thinking. He wasn't stupid. He knew Vanessa. He knew how she worked. And he knew when she was playing a game. He opened another message thread. Gage, you think this is a setup? A minute later, his phone buzzed. Riley, 100%. Gage smirked. Vanessa and Logan thought they were setting a trap. They had no idea they were walking into one. Gage pulled into the parking lot of the diner Vanessa had chosen. He already knew this wasn't a conversation. It was a trap. The place was nearly empty. Just a waitress wiping down tables, an old man nursing a coffee, and a familiar face sitting in the corner. Vanessa. She looked different. More desperate. Dark circles under her eyes, hair a little out of place. She wasn't the polished, perfect wife anymore. Gage walked in, sat across from her without a word. She fidgeted with the napkin, biting her lip. Thank you for coming. He leaned back, arms crossed. Cut the act. What do you want? She swallowed. I miss you, Gage. I made a mistake. Gage exhaled slowly. Here we go. You miss me? He tilted his head. Or do you miss the life I gave you? Her face crumpled, but she held herself together. I love you. He barked out a laugh. Love. His eyes darkened. You had sex with another man in our bed, Vanessa. That's not love. That's selfishness. Tears welled in her eyes. It wasn't like that. You think I don't know this is a setup? Gage interrupted. You're a bad liar, Vanessa. You always have been. Her breath hitched. He glanced at the reflection in the diner's window. The black car parked outside. The shadowed figure sitting behind the wheel. Logan, you brought him here. Gage's voice was eerily calm. Vanessa stiffened. I don't. His eyes locked on hers. If you were smart, Vanessa, you would have stayed gone. She flinched like he'd hit her. He stood, tossing a 20 on the table. Tell Logan I'll see him soon. Then he walked out, not sparing her another glance. The real war was about to begin. Logan watched from the car, fingers drumming against the wheel. Gage was calm. Too calm. That wasn't how this was supposed to go. Vanessa slid into the passenger seat, eyes red. He knew. Logan's jaw clenched. Of course, he knew. Vanessa sniffled. This isn't working, Logan. He's always 10 steps ahead. Not for long, Logan muttered. She hesitated. What are you planning? Logan stared out the windshield, his grip tightening. Something that'll end this once and for all. Vanessa's breath caught. You mean? I mean, he said, voice low. It's time to take things to the next level. She paled. Logan? No. He'll kill you. Logan smirked. Not if I kill him first. Gage felt it before it happened. A shift in the air. The subtle weight of eyes on his back. He'd been trained for moments like this. He parked outside his motel, turned off the truck, and sat still for a beat. Listening. Waiting. Then footsteps. Slow. Careful. Trying too hard to be quiet. Gage exhaled through his nose. Here we go. The second he opened his door, he moved fast. Pivoted. Struck. His elbow connected with the attacker's ribs. A grunt of pain. A stumble. Gage grabbed him, slamming him against the truck. Logan. The cop's face twisted in rage, breath coming hard. He swung, wild, desperate. Gage ducked, grabbed his arm, and twisted. A sickening pop. Logan screamed, dropping to his knees. Gage crouched beside him, voice ice cold. Did you really think you could take me? Logan gasped through the pain. Gage leaned in. You're done, Logan. The cop's eyes burned with hatred. This isn't over. Gage smirked. It is for you. Then he let go, stepping back as Logan crumpled to the ground. Lights flickered on in the motel. Someone would call the cops soon. Didn't matter. Gage wasn't afraid. Logan had just played his last card. And he had lost. Logan was a mess of pain on the ground, one arm limp at his side, his face twisted in rage. But even now, even after Gage had dismantled him in seconds, he still had that look. That cocky, arrogant, cop who thought he was untouchable look. Gage had seen it before. On men in war zones. On men who thought the rules didn't apply to them. It never ended well for those men. Logan spat blood onto the pavement, forcing a smirk through the pain. What now, Marine? You gonna kill me? Gage crouched beside him, shaking his head. The fact that Logan thought death was the worst thing that could happen to him meant he still didn't get it. You already killed yourself, Logan. Gage's voice was eerily calm. You just don't know it yet. Logan's smirk wavered. Screw you. Gage leaned in. His next words landed like gunfire. You lost your job, your wife, your house, your reputation. A pause. A slow smirk. And in about 5 minutes, you're gonna lose what's left of your freedom. Logan's breathing changed. Faster. Shallower. He was realizing it now. Realizing he was cornered. Gage took out his phone and sent a single text. To Riley. It's done. Make the call. Logan's eyes widened. You son of a... The sound of approaching sirens cut him off. Red and blue lights flashed across Gage's face as the squad cars rolled up. Officers stepped out. Guns drawn. On the ground. Hands where we can see them. Gage raised his hands lazily, stepping back. He wasn't the one they wanted. Logan's face drained of color as he turned to see his own department staring him down. His own officers. And then, reality hit. He wasn't one of them anymore. Vanessa clutched her phone, her heart hammering against her ribs. She had just gotten off the phone with Logan. Or rather, she had listened to Logan panic, rage, and then get cut off when the cops showed up. He was arrested. And that meant she was alone. Truly, painfully alone. Her parents hadn't spoken to her in weeks. Her friends? Gone. Her job? Gone. And Gage? He was living his life like she had never even existed. She had driven by his gym yesterday, watched through the window as he laughed with his brother, the kind of laugh that used to belong to her. It should still belong to her. She had to fix this. She grabbed her coat and keys, ignoring the pit in her stomach as she got in her car and drove toward the one place she still had left. Gage. Logan sat in the interrogation room, wrists cuffed to the table, his career in ruins. Across from him? His former captain. Captain Reed had been the one who vouched for him when he made detective. The one who shook his hand at the department Christmas party. No? That man looked at him like he was a stranger. You've been charged with multiple counts of misconduct, including obstruction of justice and tampering with evidence, Reed said flatly. Logan scoffed. This is a joke. Reed's expression didn't change. You're not a cop anymore, Logan. Something sharp and cold lodged itself in Logan's chest. Not a cop anymore. He had built his whole life on that badge. The respect. The power. And now? Now, he was just another criminal. Any last words before we transfer you? Reed asked, standing. Logan swallowed hard. He had nothing to say. The door opened, and 2 officers walked in, ready to take him away. Logan clenched his jaw as the cuffs around his wrist were tightened. This wasn't over. It couldn't be. Gage knew Vanessa was coming before she even knocked. He had seen her car pull up from his window, headlights cutting through the night, parking hesitantly outside his place like she was debating whether or not she should be here. She shouldn't, but she was. And now, as the first knock landed against his door, Gage felt nothing. No anger, no regret, no love. Just the cold, unwavering certainty that whatever she was about to say, it didn't matter. He opened the door. Vanessa stood there, her coat pulled tight around her, eyes red-rimmed, lips trembling. She looked broken. But Gage wasn't falling for it. Not again. Gage. Her voice cracked. Can we talk? He leaned against the frame, arms crossed. What's left to say? Tears welled in her eyes. Real ones, maybe. Or maybe just another act. I messed up, she whispered. I threw everything away, and I don't even know why. Gage didn't answer. He just watched her, waiting. She let out a shaky breath. I thought I wanted excitement. I thought I wanted more. But the truth is, nothing was ever better than you. A long silence stretched between them. Then Gage chuckled, shaking his head. That's the problem, Vanessa. His voice was calm, cold, final. You only realize the value of something after you've destroyed it. Her face crumpled. Please, Gage. He held her gaze. No, and then he shut the door. Vanessa's muffled sobs echoed through the hallway, but he didn't listen. He was done. Vanessa's hands trembled as she gripped her steering wheel, tears burning behind her eyes. She had lost. She had lost everything. Her marriage, her home, her friends, her dignity. And now? Now, she was just another forgotten mistake. Her grip tightened. No, she wasn't going down like this. She pulled out her phone, her fingers moving before she could second-guess herself. The call rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Vanessa. She swallowed hard. I need your help. A pause. Then, what do you want? Her pulse pounded. She knew what she was about to do. She knew it was wrong. But she also knew she couldn't just let Gage win. I want to make him pay. Riley sat across from Gage at the same coffee shop they had met in before, her fingers tapping against her cup. She looked calm. Too calm. You look like you have something to say, Gage noted. Riley tilted her head, studying him. You really think Vanessa's just going to disappear? Gage smirked. She's got no choice. Riley leaned forward, her voice lowering. You think she's going to go out quietly? Gage frowned. What do you know? Riley exhaled, sliding a folder across the table. I started digging deeper. Logan wasn't just cheating on me, Gage. He was dirty. Gage opened the folder, flipping through the documents inside. Police reports, bank transactions, surveillance photos. His jaw tightened. Logan wasn't just a corrupt cop. He was involved in something bigger, something worse, something that wasn't over. Gage closed the folder slowly. Looks like this war isn't finished after all. Gage drove through the empty streets, his grip on the wheel tightening. Logan being a dirty cop didn't surprise him. The guy had always reeked of corruption. But what Riley had uncovered, that was a whole different level. The money, the hidden accounts, the backdoor deals with criminals. And now, with Logan out on bail, he was desperate. Desperate people made mistakes, which meant it was time to push him into making one. Riley met him outside an old storage unit on the outskirts of town. She was dressed in all black, her hair pulled into a tight ponytail. She looked ready for war. You sure about this? She asked, unlocking the unit. Gage stepped inside, scanning the rows of old police files and boxes of evidence. I don't just want Logan to lose, he said. I want him to burn. Riley smirked. Then you're gonna love what I found. She pulled out a USB drive, holding it between her fingers. This, she said, tapping it, is everything. The deals, the money trails, the names of people Logan worked with. Once this gets out, he won't just lose his freedom. He'll have every dirty cop and criminal he ever worked with coming for him. Gage took the drive, his mind already racing. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about justice, and he was about to deliver it. Vanessa had never felt so powerless. Her world had shattered, and Gage had done it effortlessly. He had exposed her, humiliated her, left her with nothing. But there was still one thing she could do. One move left to play. She picked up her phone and dialed. It rang 3 times before Logan's voice came through. "What do you want?" he snapped. Vanessa swallowed. She knew he hated her now, blamed her for everything. But he needed her just as much as she needed him. "I want revenge," she whispered. Logan was silent for a moment. Then, a slow chuckle. "You sure about that, sweetheart?" he said. "Because once we start, there's no going back." Vanessa closed her eyes. She had already lost everything. What else was there left to lose? Gage sat in his truck, watching the police station from a distance. The USB drive sat in his hand. All the evidence he needed to destroy Logan for good. All he had to do was walk inside. Hand it over. Let the law do the rest. But something wasn't right. His instincts screamed at him. Danger. His phone buzzed. A message from Riley. "Riley, Vanessa and Logan are working together." Gage's jaw clenched. Of course they were. They had nothing left, except their hate for him. A slow smirk curled at the edge of his lips. Let them come. Because this time, he was ready. The police station was quiet, the hum of fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Gage sat across from Detective Lawson, a seasoned cop who had seen his fair share of criminals. But this wasn't just any case. This was about one of their own. "You're telling me Kessler was involved in illegal dealings?" Lawson asked, his fingers drumming on the desk. Gage leaned forward, placing the USB drive on the table. "I'm not telling you. I'm proving it." Lawson eyed the drive, then sighed, rubbing his temple. "You realize if this is real, Kessler's not just facing jail time. He's a dead man walking." Gage smirked. Then maybe he should have thought of that before he sold his soul. The detective inserted the USB into his computer, his eyes narrowing as he clicked through the files. Then his jaw tightened. A long silence stretched between them. Finally, Lawson stood. "We'll handle this." Gage nodded once. He didn't need to say anything else. Within the hour, a SWAT team was rolling out, and Logan Kessler was about to meet the end of the road. Vanessa sat in her empty apartment, the walls closing in around her. The TV flickered, the news anchor's voice cold and sharp. "Breaking news. Officer Logan Kessler has been arrested on charges of corruption, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy to commit multiple felonies." Vanessa's stomach twisted. This wasn't supposed to happen. She had planned on Gage going down, not Logan. Her phone buzzed. A text from a number she hadn't seen in weeks. "Mom, don't call us again." Her chest tightened. Her parents had cut her off. Her friends were gone. Her career? Dead. She had nothing left. And the worst part? She had done it to herself. A knock at the door made her flinch. She swallowed hard, then stood. Opened it. A stranger in a dark suit stood on her doorstep. "MS. Holloway?" the man asked, his voice smooth. Vanessa's heart pounded. "Who are you?" The man smiled. But it wasn't a friendly smile. "I work for some people who used to do business with Logan." His eyes darkened. "And we have a problem." Vanessa's breath caught. Logan wasn't the only one who had made enemies. And now? They were coming for her, too. The courtroom was packed. Gage sat in the back row, arms crossed, watching as Logan sat in front of the judge, wearing an orange jumpsuit instead of a badge. "Karma." The prosecutor stood. "Your Honor, Logan Kessler abused his position as an officer of the law. He took bribes, falsified evidence, and engaged in illegal activities that put countless lives at risk. We recommend the maximum sentence." Logan's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, my client was a decorated officer. He made mistakes, but the judge held up a hand." "Enough." Logan sat rigid, his face tight. The judge's gavel hit the desk. "Logan Kessler, you are hereby sentenced to 20 years in federal prison." The courtroom erupted. Logan's face went pale. 20 years. He turned, locking eyes with Gage. Pure hatred burned in his expression. But Gage? He just smiled. Justice was served. And Logan Kessler was finished. Gage was packing up his apartment when the phone rang. He glanced at the screen. Vanessa. He should have ignored it. But something in his gut told him this wasn't just another desperate attempt to win him back. He answered. Silence on the other end. Then, a shaky breath. "Gage." Her voice was raw, hollow, defeated. He exhaled, rubbing his temple. "What do you want, Vanessa?" A pause. Then, "I have nowhere to go." He let that sink in. The woman who once had everything was now completely alone. "Not my problem," he said flatly. "Gage, please," she whispered. "I know I deserve this. I know I ruined everything. But I don't know what to do. I don't know how to start over." His grip tightened on the phone. He could hear it in her voice. She wasn't just sad. She was broken. Once upon a time, he would have cared. He would have tried to fix her. But that man was gone. "You figure it out," he said. "Just like I had to." And then, for the last time, he hung up on her. Vanessa's sobs were the last thing he ever heard from her. And for the first time in a long time, he felt free. Gage walked out of the courthouse, the divorce papers finalized. No more ties. No more ghosts of the past holding him back. Garrett, his brother, leaned against Gage's truck, smirking as he tossed him a beer. "So it's official?" Garrett asked. Gage nodded, cracking open the can. "It's done." Garrett studied him. "How do you feel?" Gage took a long sip, the cold bitterness settling in his chest. Then he looked up at the sky, the first real breath of freedom filling his lungs. "Like I finally got my life back." And for the first time in months, that life actually felt like it was his again. Prison was cold. Logan sat on the edge of his bunk, his hands clasped together, his mind replaying the trial. 20 years. 20 years in a cage. Because of Gage. The hate inside him burned hotter than ever. He had lost everything. His job, his freedom, his reputation. But this wasn't over. Not for him. He grabbed a crumpled piece of paper and a pencil, pressing hard against the surface as he wrote a name. Gage Holloway. His time in the outside world might be over. But revenge? Revenge never died. Logan smirked. He'd get even one day. One way or another. The smell of burnt coffee and cheap fried food clung to Vanessa's uniform as she wiped down a table, her muscles aching. She never thought her life would come to this. A year ago, she was dining at five-star restaurants, posting vacation pictures, living the life of a perfect Marine's wife. Now, she was just another nameless waitress in a greasy diner. A group of customers laughed at the counter. One of them, a man in a suit, barely glanced at her as he handed her a crumpled bill. No tip. Vanessa's throat tightened as she took the money. This was what she had become. Disposable. Unnoticed. A background character in other people's lives. She had deserved punishment. She had betrayed Gage. She had been selfish. But this felt like a slow, never-ending death. She turned toward the window, her breath catching as a familiar truck pulled up outside. Gage. Her heart pounded as he stepped out, walking toward the diner, toward her. She wasn't ready for this. She turned away, pretending to fix a tray, hoping he wouldn't see her. But she felt him. And then his voice. "Vanessa." She froze. Slowly, she turned. And the look in his eyes? It wasn't anger. It wasn't pain. It was nothing. Like she was just another stranger in the world. Her chest tightened. "Gage." He pulled out his wallet, tossing a 20 onto the counter. "Keep the change." And just like that, he walked away. Vanessa gripped the counter, her vision blurring with unshed tears. She had wanted him to suffer. But in the end, she was the only one who lost. Gage didn't look back. Vanessa was just a ghost now. A memory. And he had no more room for ghosts. As he stepped outside, a familiar voice made him stop. "Didn't expect to see you here." Gage turned, his eyes narrowing as he saw Riley Kessler leaning against her car. She smirked. "You really know how to put on a show." He shook his head. Wasn't a show. Just reality. She studied him, then motioned toward the road. "Walk with me." He hesitated. Then he did. For a while, they just walked in silence. Finally, she spoke. "Logan's locked up for good. Vanessa's got nothing left. That should feel like a win, right?" Gage exhaled. "It does." Riley tilted her head. "But..." Gage glanced at her, a smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. "But I'm not done living yet." She smiled. "Good." They reached the end of the block. The air was crisp, clean. A new beginning. Riley nudged him. "You buying dinner, or what?" Gage chuckled. Thought you didn't need anyone taking care of you. I don't. She grinned. But I wouldn't say no to a steak. Gage shook his head, laughing softly. Maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something new. The envelope was old, stained, the edges rough from handling. Gage stared at it for a long moment before opening it. Inside, a letter from Logan. His handwriting was jagged, rushed. Holloway, you think this is over? It's not. I may be in a cell, but I've got people on the outside. People who don't forget. People who don't forgive. Watch your back. Sleep with one eye open. Because one day, I'll be free. And when I am, you're first on my list. Gage read it twice. Then he smirked. He grabbed a lighter from his pocket, flicked it open, and held the flame to the paper. The edges curled, blackening as the letter disappeared into ash. He wasn't afraid of Logan. Not now. Not ever. Gage stood in front of his old house for the last time. The for sale sign creaked slightly in the breeze, its bold red letters cutting through the overgrown front lawn like a wound that was finally closing. He had spent years building a life here. A home. A future. And now? Now it was just another place on a real estate listing. He ran his fingers over the hood of his truck, his reflection staring back at him in the polished metal. He barely recognized himself anymore. Not because he had changed physically, but because he had survived. He had walked through the fire of betrayal, of rage, of heartbreak, and somehow he had come out the other side. A new man. He felt it in his bones as he grabbed the last of his things from inside, just a few personal belongings that had been too much of a hassle to take the first time he left. Old photos. Books. A jacket Vanessa had given him years ago. He left the jacket. He didn't need anything that reminded him of the past anymore. The past was dead. A sleek black sedan pulled up just as he was shutting the door for the last time. Riley stepped out, sunglasses perched on her nose, her long brown hair tied up in a loose bun. You ready? She asked, smirking. Gage tossed his duffel bag into the back of his truck. Been ready. She studied him for a moment, then nodded. Good. They didn't need to say anything else. She climbed into her car. He climbed into his truck. And together, they drove away. Not looking back. Because there was nothing left behind them worth remembering. The road stretched ahead, endless and free. Gage had never felt this way before. Weightless. Unburdened. For the first time in his life, he wasn't chasing something. Not war. Not revenge. Not the broken pieces of a marriage that had crumbled long before he noticed the cracks. He was just existing. And damn, it felt good. He and Riley had driven for hours before stopping at a small roadside diner somewhere outside of town. The neon, open 24 hours sign flickered above the door, casting a dull red glow across the parking lot. They stepped inside, finding a quiet booth in the back. A waitress, a woman in her 50s with tired eyes and a kind smile, poured them coffee without asking. Gage wrapped his hands around the warm ceramic mug, letting the heat seep into his fingers. Riley stirred her coffee lazily. So, what now? Gage exhaled. Now. He leaned back in the booth, staring out the window. Now, I live. She smirked. That's simple, huh? Yeah. He nodded. That's simple. For once, life didn't feel like a battlefield. There were no enemies waiting in the shadows. No knives aimed at his back. Nowhere to fight. Just the hum of an old diner radio, the sound of coffee cups clinking, and the promise of something new. Something real. Maybe he and Riley would go their separate ways after this. Maybe they wouldn't. But either way, Gage Holloway was finally free. And that was enough. The sun hung low over the horizon, stretching long golden shadows across the open road. Gage drove in silence, the steady hum of his truck filling the space where thoughts used to linger. For the first time in a long time, his mind wasn't crowded with anger. No memories of Vanessa's betrayal. No echoes of Logan's threats. No weight of the past dragging behind him like rusted chains. It was over. Logan Kessler was locked away, rotting in a cell, counting the years he'd never get back. Vanessa Holloway? She was a ghost now, a forgotten name in a past life. He didn't hate her anymore. He didn't feel anything at all. And that was the best part. Gage pulled off the highway, his truck rumbling into the parking lot of a small roadside motel. He needed a break before deciding where the road would take him next. The world felt open now, not like an escape, but like an invitation. He climbed out of the truck, stretching, inhaling the crisp evening air. No more battles to fight. No more wars to win. He was free. And that freedom? That was justice. One last message. Before you go, I have one question for you. If you were in Gage's shoes, would you have handled it differently? Would you have sought revenge, or would you have walked away? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear how you would have played this game. And if this story kept you on edge, if you felt every moment, every twist, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Because this is just the beginning. There are more stories to tell, more betrayals, more justice. And trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.